Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and the Fool.
So I read A Confederacy of Dunces
Yes.
in the last week, and so you've read it. And so my thoughts on the book are, so this will be spoilers for the whole book, I guess.
Yes.
It's a classic. It's not exactly, I guess the ending is kind of spoilable in a way, just because of how everything suddenly fits together.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you don't want to hear the spoilers for that, then go somewhere else, I guess.
Yeah.
So my thoughts on it are, it would probably be a pretty funny book if it wasn't so painful in a lot of ways to read. And then the second thought is it really needs to be, it needs to be edited. Like, it's not very well written. It didn't have a proper pass from an editor, which I was reading a bit about the history of the book, and the guy who wrote the intro at the start, who said, the mom came to him and said, "This is my dead son's book," and everything. He suggested they don't edit it, they just release it as is, basically.
Yeah.
Which I think was the right call.
Yeah.
Because what's his name? John Kennedy Toole couldn't give feedback on what they did with the editing, right?
Yeah, Tolkien had the whole situation where he was contacted by, I think it was a Polish editor, and they said they translated a bunch of the names. And he said, "Why do you have to translate the names to their meaning? Just leave..." He was a lot more ruthless. Just leave them the way they are. They can read Took as Took. You don't have to try to translate the meaning.
Yeah, what did The Witcher did that.
Yeah.
So, and I think The Witcher might be more popular outside of Poland than in, it's very popular in Poland, but there's less Polish people than there is, Americans and British and Canadians. And because some of the characters' names, they completely changed. And also Witcher itself is not what a better name for the series might have been the Warlock.
Yeah.
Because Witcher in English means someone who hunts witches, right? Like a ratter, a witcher, that's the sort of cognate there is someone who hunts witches. But it was a tricky thing to translate because what he actually did was it's the word witch. So it could have also been called the witch.
Yeah.
Because Geralt of Rivia is a witch.
Yeah.
But he's a male witch, and so it's the male form of witch in Polish.
Yeah.
And so the translator was like, okay, so I could call him the witch, but that doesn't give the impression that he's a male, so I'll call it a witcher.
Yeah.
And I think in Polish they don't use the male form of witch, so it's kind of like an interesting title, but so they changed it. The other name is Dandelion is not called Dandelion in the original, he's called Buttercup.
Really?
Yeah. And so they changed it. That's an interesting one, though. So his name wasn't Buttercup, obviously, it was the Polish word for buttercup, right?
Yeah.
So should the book have, if you want to translate it one-to-one, because I'm kind of a fan of the idea of literal translations one-to-one, right? But if you're doing a literal one-to-one translation, should his name be Buttercup, or should it be the Polish word for buttercup?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, so in Japanese people, a lot of their names are quite literal meanings.
Yeah.
Like, Shiro is a very popular name, and it means hero.
Yeah. But the other thing, I think this is true, I'm not sure, but I've seemed to have gathered that you can have a name, it came up in, what was that anime called? Death Note.
Yeah.
The main character, Light.
Yeah.
His name, for some reason, he always mentions to people the characters it's made up of.
Yeah.
So it seems like you could have whatever his name is, Light, spelled different ways.
Yeah, well, so it can be spelled different ways. There's different ways to do it. It's kind of like saying my name's Frank with a PH.
Yeah, except it's like, my name's Frank, where, the spear warrior, and instead of it being the normal horseman, it's actually like a dragon.
Yeah.
So it has there's like a double deeper meaning to it.
Yeah.
The other example I can think of is Sakurai in one of the final Smash Bros. Announcement videos. He made that pun where he said, "I heard the voice of heaven calling to me saying, you should do this, you should do that." And then he laughed and he's like, "I don't know how anyone's going to translate this." Because Nintendo is made up of the characters Heaven's Gate.
Ah.
But it doesn't mean that Nintendo means Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
It's just made up of those characters, which I don't really fully I guess I do understand it. It's like Panic.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean the god of fear and there's the link there, but it's...
Yeah, the point going back from the translations is Tolkien basically told them off.
Yeah.
And so because he was around to tell people off.
Yeah, and so he kept it to its true original state, whereas O'Toole killed himself, so he couldn't. So there's that aspect to it. And then the book itself, it definitely has... I think it would... This might be uncharitable, or it might be very charitable. I think as a play or a movie, it'd be hilarious.
It was made into a play.
It was also the guy from
Parks and Recreation, I told you.
Yeah.
He played Ignatius.
Yeah, he was like the driving force behind it or something. He's a big fan. So I think it'd be very like there's a scene at one point, for example, where Ignatius is given this pirate costume to wear, and he's complaining about it, and the hot dog vendor who gave him the pirate costume is so sick and fed up with him, he tries to stab him in the throat with his hot dog fork, and so they have a sword fight where Ignatius has this plastic cutlass and he has this
and they're dueling.
fork, and they're dueling for a while, and just this middle of nowhere, this little scene happens. I think Family Guy is actually very similar to to A Confederacy of Dunces. Like, you have a bunch of unrelated things that nothing really happens. The story isn't really about anything. And then at the end, suddenly everything collides.
Yeah, so my conclusion of the story is like, it felt weird. It's like, where's this story going? How does it end? What is it going to do? And the ending actually really works. And the ending is everyone gets what they deserve.
Well, I think it's more than that. It's actually, I think they get more than they deserve. It's weird, because Family Guy does this as well, where they have a bunch of unrelated plots, and then they all tie together. The difference with the Confederacy of Dunces is they tie together like they were made for each other. They tie together super tightly. Like, he planned this ahead in advance. You're meant to go, oh, wait a minute, that was setting up for this, and that was setting up for that. It's done very well. And then the very end of the book, right up into the last page, you think, like, what would happen in Family Guy is that Ignatius gets his comeuppance, and he gets taken away to the insane asylum, and you have a little laugh about it, right? Yeah. Instead, it's one of the most uplifting and hopeful endings I've ever seen in any book ever. And I think that's what transcends it to a great book. Yeah. So at the very end, his girlfriend, I guess, Myrna Malenkov or something?
Myrna Malenkov.
Yeah. She's this crazy Marxist socialist lady. Yeah. She's nowadays we call her like an SJW or something. Yeah. Like she falls for every black person with a guitar because they're so meaningful, and they're from Kenya and they're so special. Yeah. And anyone that claims they're a socialist, and people just easily abuse her and trick her because she's like, oh, I'm just into the cause, I'm for the cause. Yeah. And she also is psychoanalyzing everyone with Freud's beliefs, and and then she comes and meets with Ignatius, who hates her, but also is her only friend in a way. Yeah. And she's his only friend. And because Ignatius's mom is about to lock him up in an insane asylum. Yeah. And so they're like, we have to leave, and then they're taking forever to leave, and I was getting like nightmare palpitations where he's like, we got to go, and she's like, what about all your papers? He's like, okay, I'll gather my papers, and then I think we left a few. No, let's just go. Yeah. And then they drive away, and the ambulance goes flying by them, and he ducks down, and it doesn't see them. And then he reaches forward and he takes her hair, and it sounds kind of weird in this context, but he grabs her ponytail. He's sitting in the back seat because he read a statistic that you're more likely to die if you're in the passenger seat than if you're in the back seat. Yeah. So he grabs her hair and he brings it up to his wet mustache. Yep. And he sniffs it, and he's like,
he kisses it.
Yeah. And he's like, and he rolls down the window and he smells the salt air of the sea, and his valve opens, and he thinks, maybe the change is good right now.
Well, you're saying he gets more than he deserves. I think he deserves her.
Yeah, but I think like it's such a positive end. Like, he basically...
Yeah, no, I'm saying everyone gets what they deserve.
Ignatius makes everybody's life around him better. Yeah. Like, it does... He shouldn't... He's a horrible person. And yet, everybody's lives improve hugely from meeting him. Yeah. Like, that isn't divine justice. That's just weird.
Yeah, no, that's why I say it's not divine justice. Everyone gets what they deserve.
Like, the only person that has a negative outcome is Mr. Levy's wife. And she's a nasty person, so...
No, not just Mr. Levy's wife. Also the owner of the bar.
Oh, yeah, the Nazi.
Yeah, the Nazi. The Nazi proprietor.
Mrs. Lee. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she was selling pornography to underage boys.
Yeah, to high school. She had a pornography ring. Yeah. And then she also had a watered-down bar business.
And she also underpaid her staff.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually, Jones, right? Yeah. He's, like, the only really likable, cool character in the story. Hey?
I liked Mr. Levy.
Actually, like
Mr. Levy's end is another uplifting thing, actually. Like, his Mr. Levy's end is great.
Well, I think for most of the story, he's not very nice to read because he's this broken man who doesn't really help anyone around him. He's miserable, and the really interesting thing about all of Ignatius's jobs is there's little details you might not notice, and I'm sure I missed some too, where you can actually see the opportunity built into the decaying institution. Yeah. For instance, in the Levy Pants factory, when Ignatius bursts into the factory from the office, and he sees all the black people not making pants. Instead, they're sewing these magnificent dresses for themselves to bring home in these suits and right.
Yeah.
These are talented craftsmen.
Yeah.
All you have to do as Ignatius or as whatever the manager of the business, or Levy Pants himself, is go into there and say to them, okay, we're doing specialty gear. You guys are talented.
Yeah.
I'm going to double your pay, and you're going to make dresses and top hats and because you guys are clearly skilled. You're just not motivated.
Yeah.
That's all he has to do. The opportunity is already there. And then when he's working for the Paradise hot dogs, everyone keeps wanting to buy his hot dogs, and he keeps pushing them away.
Yeah. There's another character I like, which is the fairy.
The fairy? The gay guy.
Yeah.
I forget his name. Oh, Dorian Green.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dorian Green. Oh my God! No, it's not. That's it. So Ignatius, every couple pages, he'll yell, "Oh my God!"
So listening to the audiobook, the reader, a lot of people complained about like the accents he puts on.
Yeah.
But he did the "Oh my God" so perfect. Like you're listening along to it, and then Ignatius goes, "Oh my God!"
Yeah.
And he puts so much force and vehemence and resonance to it. It's like you're not going to like, all right, I'll put my phone on to like sleep or whatever, like my audiobook will sleep, so I'll turn off in 15 minutes and I'll listen to this and I'll fall asleep to it. Oh my God!
Yeah, well, apparently the big thing about... I haven't listened to the audiobook, but apparently a big thing that made the book popular was he perfectly wrote the New Orleans accent.
Yeah.
And so I guess you would want the narrator to do that as well.
Yeah, the narrator apparently messed up with New Orleans accent, but
yeah.
I didn't care about that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but apparently it's very unique in the region. But... so Dorian Green says, "I'm Dorian Green." He's like, "Oh my God, no you aren't." He says, "Well, if I told you my real name, you'd think I was dreadfully bored."
Yeah.
He's this guy that he's just amused by everything, and he has tons of money, and so he just pays to see fun things happen.
Yeah.
And he'll just cause, like, he's kind of a nasty guy in a way, like he'll send the policeman after his own friends just to see what happens.
Yeah.
But he also was a big fan of the police.
They loved that police officer.
Yeah. Yeah, Mancuso.
Yeah, Patrolman Mancuso.
Yeah, Mancuso. And he didn't really get... Oh, no, his good thing was he lost his lesbians.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had some roommates that were like, violent criminals, and he got rid of them. So.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a plus, kind of a negative, because he liked having them because he didn't have to hire security.
Yeah.
but
yeah, he was kind of a side character as well.
Yeah.
But it's like all the major characters get what they deserve. So... like, part of what it is, I think this is very interesting, is so Ignatius' father died quite young.
Yeah.
And his father seemed to be a kind of messed up man to begin with. And so Ignatius got spoiled by his mother, and she was kind of an Oedipal mother.
Yeah, well, she's... my take, I think...
like, a little bipolar as well.
I was reading a few different... people's analysis of the story, and a lot of people have a lot of sympathy for her. I don't really like not just the whole overindulgence in him, right? She also doesn't indulge in him in the right areas.
Yeah.
Like when his dog dies and he says, "Can the priest please say some words for the dog?"
Yeah.
She refuses. Like she's weirdly harsh on some things that would help a poor grieving boy who doesn't have a father, right? Like, like she has some weird lines that are probably part of what messed him up so much.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I don't think she's very likable in a lot of the things she does. And she also, she's an alcoholic to some degree or another.
Yeah, and constantly wasting money when she's in debt.
Well, I mean, I think Ignatius is doing it more so than her.
Yeah.
And it's more Ignatius' responsibility. Well, she was the one that crashed the vehicle, to be fair. But Ignatius should be paying for his own way to some degree.
Yeah.
Even if, for whatever reason... Well, the other thing... The job market is apparently amazing in New Orleans. Like, he goes into a place and they're desperate to hire him.
Yes.
So... And even, the hot dog vendor is willing to give him so many chances after he sees him eating his own hot dogs in front of him. And he's still willing to give him more chances. So, a bit of a back... So, yeah, actually, going back to Jones for a moment. I think he's the most likable guy in the story, and he's also, he's the real main character, right? Like, he's the sort of detective that solves the case, and he's the guy that fixes everything, and he's always, ooh-wee, look at that.
Well, so let me get back to my analysis of... So, Ignatius, like we said, his mother, she is not blameless in everything that's happening. And his interactions with people, he goes like a wrecking ball. basically into an area.
Yeah.
And he causes an absolute storm of chaos.
Yeah.
And he is a horrible, horrible person.
Yeah.
He is despicable. He is not likable. And he's the main character of the story. He's not the hero, but he's the main character.
Yeah.
He's absolutely horrible.
Well, that's how Jones causes everything to come crashing down. He just thinks to himself, if I can just get Ignatius in the room for a couple of minutes, he'll take the whole organization.
Yeah. And so he blunders into Levy Pants and gets someone fired and tears up the company's reputation and destroys their filing system, tries to cause a revolution, fails, and gets fired. And he blundered into a bar right at the beginning and caused a bunch of chaos, and he interacted with a bunch of characters and caused a bunch of chaos.
He's a catalyst. Right?
Yeah.
Like, he goes through and he causes...
But one thing that's throughout all of it is he's trying to do things. He is trying to do things.
Yeah, he's trying to end the war. He's trying to cause world peace.
Yeah.
He's trying to cause equal rights for black people.
Yeah, but even beyond that, like, he has his writings, he has his idea, it's like, fate has spinned me low.
Yeah.
Oh, Fortuna, your cursed wheel has spun low for me.
Yeah.
And he's got weird beliefs, and the world doesn't interact with him well. And so he does a whole bunch of stuff, and he shakes at the whole town, and a bunch of people get happy endings. And his ending is kind of terrifying. Is, like you said, his mother is going to send him to an institute.
Yeah.
And he is screwed. He basically realized he is screwed. It's like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then Mira Minkoff shows up, and it's like, I drove all the way because I was worried about you. Can I stay here the night? It's like, no, we have to leave. He sees the opportunity. And like you say, it's uplifting. Is he knows he's in it. He's lost it. And she's awful. He's awful. That's the whole thing about reflecting back on that professor. Is the professor like, those two deserved each other? I wonder if they're like, causing each other's hell. And so...
But I think the thing about them, like, they're both awful, right? But they actually make each other better. Like, they actually balance each other out in every way, basically.
Yeah. And so, when they're, like, trying to gather all the stuff, and they say, no, we'll just gather, I don't need all my Big Chief tablets. Like, I can rewrite off Nosper. But they gather, they stuff it in the car drives off. And then she snaps them. It's like, you're not just taking advantage of me again.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm not. He is taking advantage of her.
Yeah.
However,
he kind of changes his mind in the very last moment.
He changes his mind partly in the last moment, but also the kind of advantage Ignatius takes of her. Like I said, she needs that.
Yeah.
Because she has dealt with him for so long in very certain ways. And like you said, she's like, there's some foreigner shows up and she falls madly in love.
Yeah.
If Ignatius is there, she puts all her focus into Ignatius.
Yeah. Well, it's like, she's like very left-wing. Ignatius is like as right-wing as possible.
Ignatius is so right-wing, he flips the rack around to being left-wing.
Well, because I'm talking like traditional, like right-wing traditionalists. Like, Ignatius wasn't born in the wrong decade or the wrong century. He was born in the wrong millennia.
Yeah.
Like, he wishes it was the year 800.
Yes.
Like, so he's as far right-wing as possible. She's very left-wing. Ignatius is a genius. She's a bit of a ditz.
Yeah.
And, well, she's probably smart in her own way in some areas, but Ignatius is incredibly cynical. Yeah. She's very optimistic. And so they definitely do balance each other out.
Yeah. And also, he's no longer going to be doted on by his mother, if you can call that doting. It's like a weird abusive doting.
Yeah.
And...
Well, the devouring mother,
Yeah. And he's no longer going to be in that town, and I think that town was driving him insane, actually.
Yeah, and he was... There was even hinted at one point by Mirenkoff, actually.
Yeah.
The whole bus trip was a lie.
Yeah.
That didn't actually mess him up. It was the embarrassment of not getting the job when he drove out of the town.
Yeah.
And so he decided not to try again.
Yeah.
That was the whole event that caused that. And I don't know, like, she might not be telling the truth either, because there's a character... What I think is really interesting is you read the story and you think, oh, you know, obviously his mother's smothering him and he needs to get out and be on his own 2 feet, and you're psychoanalyzing Ignatius, right? Yourself, and all the characters are, and it's so obvious what he needs. And that would be a story that would be true, but it would be half a story, right? Because there are people who are injured and sick and need help, right?
Yeah.
And you have to look after them, right? And Ignatius is not one of them. But then you go to Mrs. Levy, or Levy.
Yeah.
And she is doing the exact same thing with Trixie, or whatever her name is,
Yeah.
where she is psychoanalyzing her. And what she needs work. She shouldn't be retired. And Miss Trixie hates her with every fiber of her being because she wanted to retire 20 years ago.
Yes.
And she's just been forced to go into this dull, horrible workplace year after year after year.
Yeah.
And she just wants to retire and be peaceful and happy.
She wants to retire and die.
Yeah, basically. She just let me die, basically, is her.
Yeah.
So you have two things in that story, right? It's not just a straightforward, oh yeah, everyone needs to get out there and work and that'll fix everything. Because that is exactly what Mrs. Levi is doing. Or, sorry, they're obviously based on Levi jeans, right? Like 100%.
Yeah.
Levi pants, Levi jeans. But so he's saying, look, there's two ways to look at this, and you have to choose the right one for the situation.
Yeah.
Which I think is a very nice touch in that whole...
Yeah, also, like you said, Ignatius helpful. Like, Mr. Levy's story is so uplifting.
Yeah, so basically, he used to have ideas about how to make his father's company grow. Yeah. And his father would shoot him down every time and call him a moron. And then his father died, leaving him the business. And he can't stand to be in the business anymore, and he's just letting the business rot and die.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want anything to do with it. He spends all his time at the racetracks. And he is quite a wealthy man, so it's not like he's hurting for money, but he has no purpose in life. And his wife is going after him all the time for not being half the man his father was.
And using his daughters as leverage against him.
Yeah, she is... It's actually horrible. Like
blackmailing him.
She blackmails him all the time. Like, I'll write a letter to our daughters and say how horrible you are so they won't love you as much this Christmas. And slowly driving the wedge further and further and further. And then finally... Ignatius sends a letter off to their closest business partner calling them horrible people.
Yeah.
And more things than that. And so they decide to sue them for defamation and libel for $500,000, which I guess in the 60s was a decent amount of money.
Yeah.
Which would be enough to lose Mr. Levy all his money.
Yeah.
And so even though he's this million... Well, I guess he's not a millionaire, obviously. Even though he's 100,000-aire, he would be out of the business, and he'd lose all his money, and he'd be broken on the streets.
Yeah.
Although I probably not, but he'd be down. And so he decides to fix the situation instead of just crumbling under it. And so he investigates, I never wrote that letter. Who wrote this letter? Turns out Ignatius wrote it and forged his signature.
Yeah.
And then he goes to Mrs. Trixie and he says, hey, will you take he goes to Ignatius.
Yeah.
And he says to Ignatius, did you write this? And Ignatius says, no. And what's interesting, the entire story, Ignatius manipulates everyone around him.
Yeah.
Ignatius is...
I love how you described it when I was re-listening to your podcast, how like the writer of Worm apparently likes having their characters manipulate people into doing what they want, and they're like very slime balls. And it's like, that doesn't work. Like, you can't manipulate people like that.
Yeah.
Ignatius manipulates people, and the way the writer wrote it is it does work.
Yeah.
Until it comes crashing down.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, though, Mr. Levy, he's the only character in the story to actually care about Ignatius.
Yeah.
Like, he actually thinks, oh, this poor young man.
Yeah.
But he's also the only character not to fall for his lies.
Yeah.
It's like this interesting duality where there's a lot of characters that feel bad for Ignatius, but they think he's a terrible person.
Yeah.
But they do stuff for him anyways because they feel bad for him. But Mr. Levy's the opposite. He actually cares about him.
Yeah.
But he doesn't fall for any of his lies. And so he's like, oh, Ignatius clearly wrote this forgery.
Yeah.
But it'd be a lot more convenient to put the blame on Miss Trixie.
Yeah, well, so what happens is Ignatius says it was her.
Yeah.
And so he goes and he's talking to Miss Trixie. And he's looking at Ignatius's writing while talking to her and like speaking with Miss Trixie. This is back when they're in her house. This is like one of the final scenes.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's no way Miss Trixie wrote that letter. It was Ignatius.
And it uses the exact sort of phrases Ignatius uses. And then Miss Trixie actually confesses.
Yeah. She's like, yeah, if it's for Gloria, then yeah, I did it.
Yeah. And so he's like, okay, look, I'll sort you out. I'll give you whatever you want. And you'll sign this thing saying you did it. And so you'll get fired. My company won't go down. She's not gonna get hurt because she can't be blamed for the libel of like an entire so she's just gonna get fired, which that's what she wanted all along.
I'll make sure my wife can no longer find you.
Yeah, he'll keep his wife away from her. And then his wife has been writing all these horrible letters to the daughters about how he caused all the problems for this company. Turns out they're completely not true.
Yeah.
And so now he has leverage for the daughters himself, where he's like, no, I was actually helping everyone.
Yeah.
And I solved the problem. And I'm going to go into my company, and I'm going to turn it into Levy Shorts.
Yeah, and he fires the foreman.
Yeah, he fires the drunk foreman.
Yeah.
And he gets them all to start making shorts, and he's going to try this whole new business.
That one side character, right at the end, who replaced Ignatius, the new guy in charge of accounts.
Oh, just the long-haired...
The long-haired... ruffian
Yeah.
who's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, It's like they don't know what he's doing. They think he's worthless.
Yeah.
It's like, so what have you done with the files? Accounts. I've been trying to figure that out. And
Yeah.
I like to imagine, even though they're like describing him this moron, this like desperate character.
He's just so confused.
I think what was implied is even though he's like a little gross, like he's picking his nose and he's like a little doll, I think he's actually a really good accountant.
Yeah.
It's just the accounts were destroyed.
Yeah, because they talk about he doesn't do anything in a day. He just stares listlessly in the drawers and whatnot.
Yeah.
But Ignatius talks about much early on how he invented a new filing method that is much faster.
It's throw the files into the garbage.
Yeah, he was like, you have to deal with all these files. He's like, okay. Just chucks them in the garbage. But that ties into they can't trace down the reason for the letter, right? Like everything ties together, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like Ignatius wears this pirate costume, so he has a ring on his ear. Mm-hmm. And then there's this stripper act where she has a bunch of rings on her costume that a giant parakeet creature.
I think what was implied is she's calling it a parakeet, and it's one of those giant gray birds.
Yeah,
like they're calling it a smaller bird, but I think it was actually like
a very big parrot or something.
What's his name? The guy with the green sunglasses.
Jones
described it as an eagle.
Yeah.
So it was probably a giant gray species of
Well,
parrot.
it's strong enough it can tear off her entire like dress. So
yeah,
it's a big bird.
Yeah.
And everyone's afraid of it except for Darlene. Yeah.
Darlene.
Well, Jones just is kind of bemused by everything.
Yeah.
But Jones is an interesting character because he's arrested for loitering or something.
Yes, loitering.
Yeah. And then he's told he'll be charged on vagrancy for not having a job.
Yeah.
Which, is that a crime?
It was. Yeah. They got rid of it.
So he's this person that's never had a job his whole life, but then he gets a job and he decides, no, I actually want to like have it work for a living, but I actually want to be paid while I work. And so he just sets out to sabotage the business in whatever way he can.
Yeah. And even
George has a bad ending too. The pornography dealer.
Oh yeah.
Like his parents find out that he's a pornography dealer and the police come and arrest him.
Yeah. But even his mother and the old man.
Yeah. Yeah, they have a happy ending.
They have a happy ending in an interesting way, which is the old man and her are also both kind of awful people.
Well, the old man seems okay. Like he doesn't like communists.
No.
But, he's rich, he's a simple man.
Yeah.
That's something you wouldn't hear. That's a story element that makes no sense these days, huh?
Yeah.
This man worked a minimum wage job for 45 years, so now he's a rich man that can buy a couple houses and because they gave him a good pension.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. Some sort of fantasy book.
Yeah, and like the best friend, Mancuso's aunt.
Oh yeah, Santa.
Yeah, Santa. Like she saves basically Ignatius's mother.
Yeah. Yeah,
because Ignatius' mother has no friends. Her whole life is focused around her son.
Yeah, and she forces her to keep leaving the house and go bowling. And the bowling
and
actually
stops
helps.
Focusing on her son.
And the bowling actually helps with her arthritis as well.
Yeah.
It makes her feel better. And she gets her husband, and she also helps her nephew out.
And, most importantly, the character that gets the most of their disorder is that poor woman who's their neighbor. No longer has to deal with it.
Yeah, Miss Anna. Or whatever.
I hate Mrs. Anna.
Yeah, I feel like she's basically another Ignatius in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like, if she wasn't so busy spying on her neighbors, maybe she wouldn't
be so stressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, although to be fair, I think her window stares into Ignatius's window. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's got all sorts of horrors from there.
Yeah.
There's some stuff Ignatius does that I don't want to talk about. Like, it's so disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, he's... Like, just the one thing, this is a lesser thing. And this ties into Ignatius's character, right? We talked about how he wants to cause world peace and he wants to get black people equal rights. Yeah. He doesn't do it because he cares about them at all. He does it because he wants to have a better social movement than Malenkov or whatever her name.
Yeah.
Myrna. Like, he wants to just show her up and show that he's a better social mover than she is.
Yeah.
Because he hates gay people and he hates black people and Now, don't get him wrong.
He hates the working class.
Yeah, he hates the working... He hates everyone.
He hates the wealthy. He wants to be poor.
There's also some detail. Yeah, he thinks having money is a.
He even though he hates black people, he think it'd be great to be a black person.
Yeah,
because then there'd be no social pressures on him, and he could be what Jones is trying to stop being.
Yeah, he just wants to be a vagrant and live in his own filth and not do anything all day.
Yeah,
live off the social welfare check.
Yeah, like
he talked about my life.
He wished he'd been born black because he describes what his mother would be like if she's black. It's just like God.
Or he talks about how before he met Mancuso and like the whole arresting. His life was perfect. He spent months at a time in his room, and then he would leave to go and grab his social insurance check, and then he would go back to his room.
Yeah.
But so when he's doing the revolution, this is something that's part of his character, right? And I can think of people in my life that are like this, or not people that I've met that are like this. Let's say. So this is not like a fake thing. This is a real thing, but it's a weird characteristic, and it's something I think I can also see in myself at times. Probably, I'm sure in different areas everyone does this, but he really wants this revolution to succeed, right? And yet, for the banner, he takes his dirty bed sheet.
Yeah.
He doesn't get a clean bed sheet. He doesn't wash his own bed sheet. He doesn't grab some of the fabric from the factory. He doesn't do anything to make the movement succeed.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't try. He wants this. He really believes in this thing, but he doesn't try. He doesn't put in any effort. He just takes this disgusting bed sheet and he makes the workers hold it, and they don't want to hold it.
Yeah.
And then he wants to give us inspiring speech on top of like a 2-foot tall table.
Yeah.
So he forces them to carry him on top of the table, and he yells at the people that ask like simple questions. Like they're really willing to have a revolution. Yeah. They're there for him. They're ready to go. And then he just makes enemies instantly.
Well, the scene is a comedy of errors. Like, there's a choir of women who are all singing. So they're singing gospel soul music, basically.
Yeah.
And they're getting really into it. And they're just enjoying singing. And then he shouts at them basically to stop.
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't like her singing, then we're not doing your revolution.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, if you're not with them, then we're not with them.
Or he calls them all idiots for like dropping him when they put him on the table, and so he loses their. He does another thing that's quite cruel to one of them.
Well, he tells them to attack the manager.
Oh yeah, they're like, brick him over the head.
Yeah, and he's saying like, fall to your savage nature, basically.
When he first comes to the job, how does he instantly get the guy fired? He's just like...
as a woman, he gets her fired by saying she's not doing her work well.
Yeah. But he like instantly does it. He just goes in there, he's like, yeah, I don't think she's a team player, basically.
Yeah.
We better fire her before she starts slacking off and doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, what's that guy's... I don't remember the manager's name.
It's something that reminds me of Chihuahua. I don't know why.
But he's like the only guy that actually likes Ignatius.
No, the old woman did.
Miss Trixie. I guess Miss Trixie likes him too. Yeah.
I don't know what. There's like so much just.
Oh yeah, that's weird. Actually, he like gives her lunch and he massages her feet and gives her new socks.
Well, she's an old woman.
Yeah.
But it's there's so much just absurdity in it, which is double layered. Like the massage board.
Yeah.
Don't bring my massage board into this.
Well, I think she's cheating on Mr. Levy.
Yeah, no, she is. That is why it is, and so that's why she keeps on saying, "Don't bring the massage board into it," and he doesn't care.
Yeah.
But then when Miss Trixie gets her teeth, and she
starts biting everything,
and biting people and snapping her teeth, and it is so... she's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like, what happens to her. Like, she gets hair extensions and makeup on. And even... like, yeah, no, it would benefit from a editor or benefit as a play. It's... Mancuso's this miserable guy who's trying his best.
Yeah.
And Jones...
well, Mancuso just has really bad luck. Right?
Yeah.
Like, he's a decent detective, but he's just a super bad luck.
Yeah. And Jones, he's meant to be cleaning a bar, and he has this permanent cloud of smoke around his head that no one can see through.
And he's wearing sunglasses.
He's in a dim bar wearing...
he's in a nightclub.
Yeah, he's in a nightclub wearing green-tinted sunglasses, and he's supposed to be sweeping the floor.
Yeah.
And so it's described, whenever he's sweeping, he's just evenly distributing the filth.
Well, they describe it at one point, it's like he's a farmer with furrows.
Yeah.
He's got like these mounds of dirt. He's doing it on purpose, though. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want to clean the place.
He's doing the quiet quitting.
Yeah, he's trying to destroy the business.
Yeah.
Because he thinks the proprietress... and the proprietress, that's another person, right? She's incredibly fit. She's incredibly attractive. She's pretty smart.
Yeah.
And she has all the things available to her. She owns this nightclub that a lot of people go to. And yet she waters down the beer so she has no return customers.
She doesn't hire any good entertainment.
She doesn't hire any entertainment. She doesn't hire any staff that can actually... she doesn't pay her staff enough to want to clean.
Yeah.
And she does this pornography business on the side. Like, she doesn't have to do any of that. She could just be this really healthy, beautiful woman. Everyone wants to go to her bar.
Yeah. Like, if she was a proper hostess, like, do the actual hostess thing of... so she's the owner, she's the hostess. So she makes her bar, like, a little bit more up class.
Yeah.
And she still does the legal smut shows, like the fan dance, so there's never the nudity.
Yeah.
And it's still, like, a little sleazy, but she's there, and it's like this attractive woman. She doesn't have to do the show.
Yeah.
But she can keep her reputation, and it's just, like, just being attractive and welcoming people in.
Yeah.
It's, like, the Simpsons has an episode where Bart becomes the door boy at a burlesque house. And...
is that the one where Abe Simpson goes into the place?
Yes, he's like, "Are you Bart?"
No, the one where he's like...
no, that is that whole scene, and he walks around in a circle and gets confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the proprietress there, the end scene, I've only recently watched it, is this brilliant thing where the town basically creates a mob to go burn down the historical burlesque house in Springfield.
Yeah.
And they get there, and they're smashing things and they're looting. And then Bart says, "Dad, do something." And this is one of the times where, like, Homer shines as a character. Where Homer's like, "All right, I'll do something." And so he says, "We could loot and pillage the burlesque bar." And I was like, "Yeah!" And they keep pillaging. He's like, no, stop. We could, or we could leave it here and be historical. And then he, like, starts singing a show, and it's like a whole musical number goes by.
Yeah.
But the whole thing which it expresses there is the burlesque bar is just a burlesque bar. Like, they're actually not doing anything that's porn. It's all softcore, like the fan.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing people have against it is they think they should have something against it.
Right.
When they really shouldn't. It's just, if you go there, you go there. And it's lesser than a strip club.
I mean, I think there could be a moral argument
Yeah.
against it. Like, you could be, for instance, if you're going and watching that, then you're not going out and looking for someone to give you the same thing, in quotation marks. Like, you're essentially substituting a feeling of connection.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah, but it also expresses, like, the main proprietors are the men from the old folks' home.
Yeah. So, that's actually... So, I saw an American bragging about... Well, they were saying, like, in Turkey, you can marry your first cousin. Like, they were making fun of Turkey, right? Yeah. So, I just wrote up a list of every state where it was legal to marry your first cousin, which is almost all of them. There's like 4 where you can't.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is most of them say, yeah, you can just marry your first cousin.
Yeah.
But there's like 4 or 5. You can only marry your first cousin if you're over the age of 55.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And so the idea is like being infertile for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Or just, I don't know, you don't care anymore. You don't have kids. But then there's some places where you can't marry your first cousin, but you can have sex with them. And then I think there's places where it might be the reverse as well. So, there's some weird laws there. But the what I'm getting at there, I guess, is that it's like you said, it's the old folks. It's like, well, whatever. What are they going to do? It's not. They've already done their time. They're not going to not seek out relationships. That situation changes based on who's there potentially.
Yeah. So it's back to the proprietress, like the Nazi proprietress.
Yeah.
She has every opportunity.
She's not a Nazi at all, by the way.
Yeah.
If you're not caring about spoilers, but you're listening, like it's just Ignatius calls her a Nazi.
Yeah.
That was something.
Even Darlene. Darlene's an interesting character. She wants to be an exotic dancer.
Yeah.
Like that's an interesting thing to want to be. But remember when we said if you want to be a hooker and it's your it's God's given mission to you, then you'll be the best goddamn hooker.
Yeah.
Like that's sort of what Darlene.
Well, except she's terrible at it. Right?
Yeah, she is. It's not that, but it's.
Oh, these men have so many bars in my bars. I hope. She just can never remember her lines. Just says random things. But and then the Mrs. Lee is just like sick of her. But yeah, that's actually something. So I was reading on TV tropes and a little bit on Reddit.
Yeah.
Mistake on both ends maybe about the story.
Yeah.
Really interesting. There is something wrong with, like, TV tropes. I'm not going to say is the same thing exactly, but TV tropes has the people from Reddit on it, right? Like it's the same sort of mindset, the Tumblr sort of mindset, and something is wrong with these people because they were saying that Ignatius calls everyone a Nazi, but he's the most fascist person, and he's like an anti-fascist. Like he hates fascism, so like he is not a fascist in the slightest. It's really weird that.
He's a feudalist.
Yeah, like, I don't think there's a fascist in the story. Like, no one in the story is...
Maybe one of the lesbians.
No, because fascism is the integration of the civil and the government, right? Like, it's combining, so the state controls everything for the state, everything within the state, right? Like, everyone hates the government in this story.
Yeah.
Like Mancuso is the only governmental employee,
and he wants to be. He wants to be a cop.
Yeah,
he wants to help people.
And he's been horribly abused by the government.
Yeah.
Like, the sergeant keeps making him wear all sorts of costumes when he sends him out on...
Yeah, the sergeant is trying to make him quit.
Yeah. So he gives him, like, a clown costume, and he gives him a fisherman costume, and an Elvis impersonator costume. And, but to preserve his own reputation, he finds himself this giant orange beard that he puts on.
Yeah.
But then, is this detail... This is the kind of thing an English teacher would make you write an essay about, right? Yeah. Mancuso, he nearly dies of pneumonia, being an undercover cop in a bathroom for, like, 2 weeks or whatever it was.
Yeah.
He wears all these ridiculous costumes. He's starting to hate his job more and more, and he's like at risk of dying from how poorly he's being treated, and he's going to get fired soon anyways. So he decides in one last effort he's going to take like all his money, buy the best clothes he can afford, and then he's going to go out in this amazing suit and top hat and look really fancy. And that's when he succeeds and busts open this gigantic crime syndicate.
Yeah.
Is there something in there of, like, investing in yourself, being a self... Like, do you think there's a...
I think it's the not giving up. Like, you will try one more time.
But also, like, his costumes are really obvious whenever they describe it, right? They're like, there's this sailor going down the street with this giant orange beard. But then he's actually becomes this mysterious character for the last little bit of the book. It's like, a well-dressed man peered out the alley and looked down at Ignatius. And then a well-dressed man ran down the street and you're... Oh, this is... What is this? What's going on here?
Who's this character at
He's
the
like
fifth act?
There's like a spy all of a sudden has appeared.
Yeah, why is Lupin appeared at the fifth act?
Yeah, and suddenly he's cracking all the case, and he's stalking Ignatius, and he's solved everything. It's kind of an interesting detail that he's done that.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about his Ignatius's plan for world peace as well, because it's it's quite something. So his plan is to have all politicians and all military personnel be homosexual men.
Yeah.
Because then whenever a war breaks out, it would just turn into an orgy. And whenever there's a negotiation that needs to be happening between two massive superpowers, it just turns into an orgy. And so there's no time for any... And if instead of looking for ways to like conquer people, they're just looking at the latest fashion trends.
Yeah.
And so, ideas got legs, It's...
Well, so remember what I said, he makes fun of everyone,
the
author, and it's actually like, if you are offended by him, then you're a loser.
Yeah.
Like, how he makes fun of the homosexuals.
Yeah.
And how he makes fun of the lesbians, and how he makes fun of the capitalists, like the hot dog merchant, and like every single person. He makes fun of everyone.
There's an interesting... I think this is another like English teacher essay, right? The gay party, whatever you call it. One of the guys, he's got a whip, and he's like in a cowboy. He's like this tough guy in a cowboy uniform. He goes around whipping all the other guests.
Yeah.
But then he's the first person to like faint or something when Ignatius starts fighting them.
Yeah.
So he was all a costume. But then there's the wrestler, and there's the lesbians who are actually like tough characters.
Yeah.
Although, I don't think the wrestler stopped Ignatius either.
No.
Although, to be fair, like, those 4 factory workers could barely lift Ignatius.
Yeah, he's huge.
And that was before he gained weight.
Something about Ignatius, like, he's one of those people, you see these people every once in a while in life, and they don't always have to be overweight, but a lot of the time they are overweight, where you look at this person, and they are, like, the point of overweight, if they're standing still, they're panting. Like, they sit down... And you can hear the relief coming out of their body. Yeah. And you're like, if that person, like, even lost to the weight where they're just, like, pudgy. Yeah. They'd be quite the handsome person. And this is that sort of thought of, like, you see, like, this miserable person who's not all cleaned up. And it's like, they could put themselves together and make something of themselves. Like, that sort of idea of...
Yeah. Like, Ignatius is a very strong guy. He's very big. He's very smart.
If this person sees their life... Yeah. They could be someone. And, like, Ignatius, people are terrified of him. Like, his hands are described as giant paws. Yeah. And, like, hands don't get fat unless you're really overweight. Yeah. And even then, a lot of people who are really fat and their hands are overweight, it's got, like, this weird thing where they've got, like, these tiny hands set into their giant fat arms. So Ignatius is massive. Like, he is tall and overweight.
Was it at the very end with the ambulance where he's like, they didn't have bars on the ambulance. Yeah, they underestimated.
They underestimated, like, he could have beaten them and escaped.
Yeah. They underestimated my magnificent frame.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, he doesn't consider himself to be like it to be a problem. He considers himself to have this magnificent presence.
Yeah.
Although he does worry about, mysteriously, when he gets the hot dog vendor job, he puts on a lot of weight from the stress of the job.
Yeah.
It's not from eating all the hot dog.
And also, it really starts destroying his... Don't get the hot dog juice on your skin or I'll melt it. And he pulls the fork out of the hot dog juice and it's like pitted and destroyed. The metal's being eaten.
That's another thing. Talking about opportunity, right? When he's depressed after the, I think it's after the gay party goes badly. Yeah. And he has his hot dog cart and he's driving along. And he realizes he needs a bunch of money to, I can't remember why, to go to the movies or something? He wanted a bunch of money for some reason. So he's super depressed. And he goes down to the docks where a bunch of sailors are just like exhausted. And he sells all his hot dogs in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And he makes $10 like instantly.
Yeah.
And this was the guy that was making $40 a week before.
Yeah.
At a like a sort of white collar position. And he just makes $10 like instantly. Like he could be making so much money with the Paradise. Like people love the hot dogs for some reason. I think they're described as being part rubber.
Yes.
But
part rubber, part acid, part asphalt.
Yeah. And that's what the maker of them calls them.
Yeah.
Like he's probably joking, but Ignatius talks about their it's like their plasticine like quality or something.
Well, even like Ignatius, like he's shrewd and smart. When a teenager who has part of the pornography ring comes and wants to store the stuff in Ignatius's cart, and he's like, this guy's like, he's made his mark. He sees Ignatius like, this guy's down his luck. I can make him mark. I can store my stuff here so it won't get caught out. And he has like all these plans of how he's going to sort of abuse Ignatius because he's down his luck and he needs money. And he just gets put through the ringer by Ignatius, and Ignatius comes out on top on this whole
like, can you just store this package in there? He's like, yeah, sure. And just don't look at it, but I'll give you like $1 a day if you just store my packages for you. He's like, yeah, no problem. Then he takes the package and he tears it open. He's like, what's in here? Yeah. And he just sees all the like postcards of pornography come out.
And he's like, no, you're going to have to pay me more.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, yeah, you'll have to pay me more, and also you're going to have to look after the cart for me.
Yeah.
He's like, what? But the whole point was that you would look after it.
No, but I want to go watch the movies.
Yeah. He's like, but I was like, well, then I'll tell the police about it. So now George is down the money, and he still has 3 hours to pass doing nothing. Although he does at least have a place to hide the stuff.
Yeah.
He doesn't just have to ride the bus all the time. Why did he stop riding the bus?
Because Kuzo was...
Oh, right, the police officer was riding the bus too.
Yeah, the ridiculous police officer with the orange beard was riding the bus.
Yeah. That's how he was getting around everywhere. So I read a bit about the history of the book.
Yeah.
And so the actress he's always stalking, essentially, in all her movies, and she's a real person.
Oh.
And so she did a lot of these like really sappy like romance movies and whatnot around that time. So that's a real person. When he talks about how the Pope is too soft and the church needs to be more authoritarian. Yeah. So the story was written in 1963 or so.
Yeah.
So at the time, the Pope, his name was Vatican II, and most hardcore Catholics were like, this Pope is way too hardcore. Like, he is way too strict. And so this was like one of the harshest popes in like the last couple centuries.
Yeah.
And Ignatius is like, he's too soft on people. He needs to be more authoritarian. So the writer, John Kennedy Toole, he was the youngest professor in the United States.
Really?
He was a brilliant man. He went off to university in New York, I think, and he was the youngest professor in their history. And he had a medieval history teacher who wore this great big cap all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so he based Ignatius on this medieval history teacher who had this crazy personality and would get in huge arguments with everyone. And he just loved the class because it was so weird. He would just go to the class all the time and just, what's the teacher going to do now? You never know. And so he became a professor at that school, and his best friend was a law student who, to pay for university, would sell tamales, I think it was, or something like that, out of his food truck. And so whenever his friend was busy, like doing an exam or something, as a favor to his friend, he would go around and serve. He would push the truck around town and sell the basically, sell hot dogs. Yeah. So Ignatius's experience on hot dogs is based on his own experience going around selling the hot dogs. And he based a lot of Ignatius on himself as well. So,
really?
Yeah. So it's like partly based. If you actually look at a picture, it's
I've seen the pictures of him.
Like the author, and then the picture on the cover of the book. They look kind of similar people.
It's like if you know those grotesque character art.
Yeah.
not characters.
Caricatures.
Yeah, caricature. I can't say that word.
Caricature, yeah.
Yeah. That's what Ignatius kind of looks like of him. But
Yeah.
no mustache.
Yeah, they look pretty similar. And there's 2 covers for the book. I don't know if you've seen both of them. So one of them, it's Ignatius with his green cap, and there's this giant yellow bird standing on his head.
And he has a sword in his hand.
Yeah, I think he has a sword in his hand. So that's the main cover.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting cover because it's wrong. The bird's the wrong color.
Yeah.
And Ignatius never had the bird standing on his...
And at that time, he wasn't wearing his green cap. He's wearing a pirate hat.
Yeah. And so it's a scene that doesn't actually exist, but it contains elements from the book without spoiling the book at all.
Yeah.
So kind of a neat cover that way. But the cover I really like, it's like it's Sherlock Holmes, black and white. Ignatius is stalking through an alleyway with a cutlass and his deerstalker hat. Yeah. And he's... it's just kind of this... him. You know, it's actually a scene. I think it's him going through the French Quarter or whatever. But it's actually a scene from the books more. But it makes him look like this heroic adventurer type character, which I think's kind of fun. So the Vietnam War happened, I believe it was, and he was drafted, the author.
Oh.
And so his career was kind of cut short there.
Yeah.
And he was moved to Puerto Rico, and he became an English teacher. So he'd teach Spanish speakers English during the war. And he wrote his book while he wrote Confederacy of Dunces while he was doing that. And now this part, my sympathy wavers a little bit, because he submitted his book to a publisher, and the publisher said, "This is amazing, and we would love to publish your book, but it's not about anything. Like there's nothing going on here. So can you just edit it to be about something, right? Because you just have the story where stuff happens."
Yeah.
And so they worked with him for years, going back and forth. He'd send it to them. They'd suggest edits. He would edit it. They'd go back and forth. So the very first publisher he goes to, they're like, "Oh yeah, we love your book. We'll publish it. We just want you to edit it to actually be about something." J.K. Rowling as well, right? Like she got rejected 17 times or something before she got... Like nowadays, it's like 100 to 200 rejections is normal.
Yeah.
But back then, it's like, oh, it's so tragic. J.K. Rowling and Kennedy O'Toole were rejected like one... Toole was never rejected.
Yeah.
So his book was never rejected. So he went to a different publisher, and he said, like, "Will you publish it?" Because he said to the publisher at one point, "I've edited it as much as I can. I can't change the story to be anything but what it is, because what it is right now is true. This is my life. This is what I've lived. This is New Orleans. This is me. And if I changed it to be anything more, then it wouldn't be true anymore." And they said, "Well, you're a brilliant writer. Could you write another book?" And he's like, "I could try, but this is my book." So he tried writing another book, and he just gave up on it because he was like, "No, this is my story. This is my story here." So he went to another publisher, and they basically told him the same thing. They're like, "Oh yeah, this is brilliant. We want to publish it, but
it needs to be about something."
It needs to be about something. And so he gave up on the book for a few years, because he wrote it when he was like 29 or something. Gave up on it for a few years, and then he went and visited New York. He just did a surprise trip to New York to go talk to the publisher in person, because it'd all been over the phone and by letters and stuff. And the publisher wasn't there that day. Yeah. And so he felt super embarrassed, because he's like, "Oh, I'm looking for Mr. So-and-so, like this high up at the company." And they're like, "Oh, he's not in right now. Do you have an appointment with him?" I was like, "Well, no, I just wanted to, surprise him." And it's like, "Oh, who are you?" And so he felt really embarrassed about it, apparently. I don't know to what degree he was embarrassed. Like, when a reporter says he felt embarrassed, or it's like, he might have said, "Oh yeah, that was kind of embarrassing, whatever." Or he might have been like, "This was the worst moment of my life," and whatnot. And so he was still in the military at that point, I think. I don't remember the exact chronology of events. But his dad basically went insane. His dad had more and more schizophrenic and paranoid episodes. And so he was... John was discharged from the army on... it's called hardship. Yeah. So you can be discharged for hardship, which means your life is falling apart outside the army. Yeah. You need to go and sort things out. Yeah. So it's not like he's disgraced or anything. They're just like, you go home, you help your dad, right? Yeah. So he went to go take care of his dad. And he was a professor during that time, and his dad was going crazy. And he started getting signs of paranoia and schizophrenia and whatnot. And then he decided he would go on a sort of impromptu trip around the country. He went to visit the home of his... what's her name? Victoria Faulkner, his favorite author, who she was a Southern... I don't know if you've read her stuff, but she's a Southern Gothic writer. You have to read her in a lot of English class. She's pretty...
Don't think I ever read her.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a big fan of the Southern Gothic genre. So he went to try to visit her house, but her house had been bulldozed or something, so he went to the spot where it was, and then went around, and he never returned. Yeah. And he They couldn't find him.
Yeah.
One of his army friends found him because his army friend said, a year ago we went on a little tour around the States and he drove me to this random spot, didn't say anything, we just stayed there for like 15 minutes and then we drove away.
Yeah.
It's just in the middle of the woods. And
Yeah.
so he went there and his car was there and he had run a hose from the engine into the car and killed himself. And so he'd been planning it for, like, it wasn't like this final rejection did him in or anything. Like, he'd been planning it for at least a year, maybe more.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of because one of the things that sort of bothered me was the ending of that book. Like, if the ending of that book had been a sort of funny Family Guy-esque, he gets captured and sent away to prison, he gets his comeuppance, and everyone else's lives improve or whatever, you'd be like, ha, like that would be a good ending, right? Like, that's still a decent ending to the book.
I wouldn't have been happy with that ending. I was terrified he's going to go to asylum, actually.
Like, I think he deserved it, and it would have been better for everyone. I'm not even saying it would be I think it would be good for him as well, right? Like, I think that would have been fine before Mirnikov came in.
Yeah.
With her coming in, it becomes a bit more tragic because she might have actually helped him, right? But it'd be a very Family Guy. Family Guy has a lot of endings like that, right?
Yeah.
And it would have been it would have been funny, and it would have been okay. But the ending as it is one of the most uplifting and hopeful endings I've ever read in any book ever.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really good ending. And you read that and you think, how can anyone that wrote that kill themselves, right?
Yeah.
Especially, like, Tolstoy kind of killed himself, if you think about it. He ran away from home when he was, like, 88, and he froze to death.
Yeah.
But Tolstoy, if you read War and Peace, War and Peace has this very uplifting message with Pierre throughout it, who's the main character, Pierre. But then, when Pierre finally marries Natasha, the most beautiful woman in the world, Natasha gives up on maintaining herself. She never sings again. She grows fat because I got a husband. I don't need to be pretty anymore.
Yeah.
And so he's got this it's kind of weird because it's this tragic love story. Natasha's war hero husband dies, so she marries Pierre instead.
Yeah.
She sort of settles for Pierre. And Pierre is okay with it. And Pierre becomes this man of wisdom who everyone respects, but his wife it's like this sort of happy-ish, tragic ending, but I guess a comedy technically because everyone comes together. But there's this random thing where his wife is just sort of awful. But Tolstoy wrote these books when he was like 30. All his books he wrote when he was in his 30s, and they were massive hits. He became super wealthy off of them. And then he wrote nothing for like 50 years and just got beaten into the ground by his wife for 50 years. So that I kind of understand, right? Like, you can be... Tolstoy, he started life very cynical, and then War and Peace, you can see him becoming a much more positive person. Anna Karenina, you can see him becoming... I think Anna Karenina, you can see him become more positive. But then his letters, when he's old, he wrote a lot of really long letters. They become much more cynical again. And then he ends up running away from home and freezing to death. And I think, you can see a man getting beat. But O'Toole, he had a steady job. He was the youngest professor in history. He had a bunch of friends. And more importantly, he wrote this ending that's so positive at the end of his book. It's like, that isn't... So I really think, like, his father's madness, I think he just genetically inherited it.
Well, I gathered from this might be analyzing too much into it, but his father goes mad out of nowhere, and he goes back home to take care of his father. There might have been something in their house driving them mad. Yeah,
that could be part of it. His mother was also not a very nice person to him. Like, Ignatius's mother is based on her.
Yeah.
Which makes the whole fact that she got the book published another interesting, people aren't one-dimensional, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if she saw herself in the mother or didn't see it at all, or she, maybe she wanted to ride on the coattails of her dead son and just wanted a bit of fame for that.
Yeah.
That seems like that'd be a really harsh condemnation to make, right? Yeah. But, because, everyone has their positives and negatives, right?
Yeah.
She was pretty harsh to him, didn't approve of I think it was his writing or something, and, like, was kind of a smothering mother like Ignatius's mother. That's another thing. I don't know. I know Neil Gaiman does this, and obviously, Kennedy Toole did this. The story is barely a story. It's like your life. And that's not like, if I was him, I would wait until my mom was dead before I published the book, right? Like, that's like, you don't want them reading that when they're like, you're at the breakfast table together and they're like, oh,
that's what you think of me.
Yeah, like that. I mean, maybe that's his way of expressing himself, but it's
So one thing that terrified me about the story is, I thought about it and you talked about his life story of it here. So I said earlier, it seemed like he had a portal into the future but the portal is like a Orthanc stone. It only showed him Reddit.
Oh, like a Palantir.
Yeah, he had a Palantir.
Yeah.
He had a Palantir that could look into the future.
Right.
But it only showed him Reddit.
And Tumblr, maybe.
Yeah. And, like, that's why I get feelings from so many of these characters.
Oh, that was the other interesting thing. When I was talking about these Redditors, right?
Yeah.
They were saying that Mirenkopf was a massive straw man and no leftist is like that. It's like, no, the problem is that they're all like that.
Well, so what I'm thinking is there's been an accusation that it's the universities that have done this to people.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's only been recent that this is going on. But from this writing, because I don't think he had a portal into the future.
Yeah.
I think it's been happening a lot longer.
Well, it's the meaning crisis, right? It's been happening since Dostoevsky. It's the same event.
Yeah, it's
like I was telling you how Nietzsche was complaining about those woke Christians, right? Like it's the same thing.
Yeah, it like how he describes Ignatius and Mironenkov, like they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because every time Ignatius is called a reactionary in the story, I instantly have this like, no, he's not, and then oh wait, no, he's literally a reactionary. Yeah. Like a reactionary is someone that wants to go back to the past. Like because so many people these days are called reactionaries, as if it's a bad thing, like as if being anti-progress is bad, right? Yeah. It's like if you don't like progress, you're a reactionary. But so the word has been so abused in the modern era that when it's used to perfectly describe Ignatius, I instantly my hackles go up, and I'm like, oh no, he's not. He's just because you disagree with him doesn't mean. And oh wait, no, he literally is a reactionary.
It's funny how you describe it as painful. As well, we talked about this 2 podcasts ago. Yeah. Where, like, you've only read a little bit at the time. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, do you see yourself in him? Or it's like, when I think of him as a character, and it's interesting that he's based off the author. Yeah. This is a man with so much potential. Yeah. And so many opportunities. And it's hopeful in a way. Like, if you see yourself in Ignatius. Yeah. It's just stop being him. Yeah. But I think that's the problem with, illness maybe and it could be caused by your environment, by your food, by whatever, or it could be caused by just your mindset you're stuck in or your genetics, whatever it might be. There's people with anger issues, right? They're like, I keep punching my wife and I don't want to punch my wife. Yeah. Right? Like that's, or me, I kicked a dog, I kicked you that one time, right? Like I didn't want to do that, but it's like I didn't have a choice in the moment. Or you with board games, right? Like you always used to get super upset and like just rage out and like slice open your arm to the flesh. Well, that was Here's My Magic, so fair enough. I mean, that's serious. Board games, whatever. I don't think you wanted to do that. No. I spent a long time working on that. Yeah. So it's like, just don't do it. It's like, I'd love to, but there's something wrong with me. And I don't know what, but there's something wrong. Yeah, there's, never found out who did it. And it's been fixed now. There was a dent at our high school in a wall. Oh, someone like just punched a hole in the wall. Punched a hole in the wall. And my hands were bleeding afterwards as well. A teacher, it was a substitute teacher or something, just frustrated me to no end. So I went down to the hallway, left the classroom, and punched a wall. Was that at the bottom of the stairwell of that? Yeah. Oh, we never knew who that was. Yeah. Yeah. Well, how about that? Yeah. No, my hand was like covered in cuts and bruises. I always thought it was one of the hacky sack kids. No. Yeah, mystery solved. Yeah, but it was like the only way I could deal with the anger in my head. Yeah. Was inflicting pain. And yeah, that's obviously I didn't want to inflict it to other people. And that's obviously like, and so what's the solution? That you want to inflict pain to get rid of the anger, but you don't want to hurt anyone. And so you hurt yourself, but it's not like cutting yourself to hurt yourself. It's hitting something as hard as you can, so you're hurting an inanimate object, and by proxy it hurts you. But just don't be lazy. Don't be angry. Don't be like right. Like there's, I think this is one of Nietzsche's main arguments actually, is that the amount of control we have over instinct is tiny. Yes. But I think. But then again, I stopped being angry by stopping being angry. I didn't go to psychotherapy. Yeah, but I think as you get, first of all, teenagers tend to, I don't think this happened to me so much, but teenagers tend to have a lot more hormones going through, so they have less control just because angst. But it's not just, I'm not saying like it's this trivial thing, right? Like there is no, angst isn't a trivial thing. That's just a good descriptor. But there's actually like mind altering chemicals
flowing through teenagers in a much higher
Yes.
concentration than anyone but like women.
Yeah.
Like menopausal women or women on their period, right? Like
Yeah.
like there's a lot of, and then if you're a teenage girl, then you're getting like a double whammy.
Yeah.
I don't actually know if it doubles up or not, but I assume it can. So that's going to cause even more problems. And then if you throw in just another, like, you're eating some sort of poison that you don't think's a poison, like maybe some corn product or some seed oils or whatever it might be. Like, I'm not saying those are necessarily the ones that do it, but there is definitely things out there that aren't good for you. So, or the environment's really noisy, it's madness inducing, or you've got problems at home,
and you're genetically a little bit predisposed.
Yeah. Or maybe your dog just died, and you know, there's all sorts of things that can combine. Or you've got the frustration from something else. Like, I'm not saying this would actually be the case, but in your case, dyslexia, that's constantly a little annoyance that you're overcoming, right?
Yeah.
That you're devoting enough brain power to that already, and then suddenly you have to deal with all the rest of life as well.
Yeah.
Like that's going to add up. I'm not like, it might not in that case, but it's definitely something you have to deal with. Or if you're in constant pain, you're going to be, you know.
Yeah. No. God, being in chronic pain as a teenager is one of the worst things. So one of the things about chronic pain is it's very hard to prove.
Yeah.
Because like, I have an injury and like your foot's messed up.
Yeah.
But chronic pain as a teen, it's like someone's like, old man has back pain.
Yeah.
It's like old man Jenkins has back pain.
Yeah, it's like old men have back pain. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, they slipped a disc or whatever it is. But if you're a teenager, it's like you're not young enough to have back pain.
Yeah. Or if like your pyloric valve is sealing and no one will listen to you.
Well, this is the thing, right? So that's interesting actually to talk about that pyloric valve sealing, because I had terrible back pain.
Yeah.
And I had a weird high school experience. I, grade 11 and 12, I couldn't sit in desks anymore.
Yeah.
I physically couldn't, like I could sit in them, but it caused me so much pain that I didn't. However, I sort of did what Ignatius did to a certain extent of, I would go to the teacher and say, oh, my valve.
Yeah.
But I go to the teacher and say, I can't sit in these desks.
Yeah.
Can we have a solution? And so one classroom, I had like a much larger chair and it was like a proper table. And I sat there in the back of the class because there wasn't enough room.
Yeah.
In another class, the teacher let me sit on the windowsill because the class had these massive windowsills. And so I would lie sideways on the little windowsill and attend the class because my body couldn't be in a sitting position. I had to be lying sideways.
It's like Ignatius would literally lie on his side to like jiggle his valve loose or whatever.
Yeah, I would lie on my side to cope with the back pain.
Yeah.
And like I would communicate with the teachers, this is what I need.
But it's so easy to look at another and say, well, I don't see your pain.
Yeah.
So you are just a hypochondriac, right?
Yeah.
I think hypochondria is the worst invention humanity has ever come up with because it's so compelling, right? Like the moment you're talking about this, I'm like, geez, what a whiner. Like he just wants special treatment. Like that's in my head immediately.
Well, it's interesting. I think because I was slightly weird and eccentric.
And I mean, you did do stuff like that too. Like you would be like, I'm too tired to keep doing it, right? Like, and maybe that's because of pain, but you would do that sort of thing. So it doesn't.
Yeah. But like as people knew me in high school, I was slightly weird and eccentric, and but I got along with basically all of my peers quite well, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm the best of friends with everyone, but it was the sort of thing like, oh yeah, Connor, I like Connor.
Yeah.
Like it's, oh, don't say a bad thing about Connor, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
It was that sort of level of just being like, everyone likes him, they don't know him super well, he's friends with his friends, he's nice to be around. And so I didn't have that sort of resentment of, oh, why is that weirdo lying down back of class? Because there's someone else in my class who also I think had a lot of problems. And he would have similar behaviors to me in the, like lounging about, lying down, all sort of things. Like very similar to what I did of lying down back class.
Yeah.
He had terrible hygiene.
Yeah.
He had a kind of rotten personality. And because the whole world didn't like him, he didn't like them.
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of very similar things. But most people in my class had the, oh, I don't know him very well and I don't like him.
Yeah, that's a good reason to cultivate trust in people and
yeah, and it's like we're very similar, but it's like like he had the outlook of the world's down on me, so I don't like them, Whereas I was just like, yeah, I'll be friendly with people.
One of the things with hypochondria as well that people will do is, like in your case, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, we like Connor. Whatever. So they'll be like, oh yeah, no, we don't think you're lying. We just think that you're a lazy so and so that doesn't realize that everyone's dealing with the same problems and they want special treatment, and they're like, it sort of becomes this oh no, you're not lying. It's just you're not sucking it up as much as everyone else, sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that's true for a lot of. There's a lot of talk about like destigmatize mental illness, and then when someone's mentally ill, people are like, oh, go
to asylum.
Go to a psychologist. Like,
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Go to Bedlam. Go to a psychologist. It's the same thing. It's like, I don't want to deal with you. I want you to be not this. So go away. I want them to cut out that bit of you that makes you that way you are, right? And bring it, and so I don't have to deal with it. And those are the people that are like like, oh, we need to destigmatize mental illness. Like, why don't you just go to, like, mental illness isn't Batman sitting on the roof brooding while with your millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Like, mental illness is randomly screaming and punching a wall because someone said hello instead of hi, you know?
Yeah.
Or like, the mental illness is, well, we define, this is kind of crazy in itself. We define mental illness basically on the inability to integrate with society.
I hate that story.
Which
where
one?
the whole kingdom goes mad.
Oh, yeah.
And the king's the only sane guy left.
Well, except you'd be definitionally mad, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, so an outsider comes to that kingdom later.
Yeah.
And everyone's dead.
Yeah. But they were... well, what was... There's that very famous quote by that dude. Indian guy. Nish Shamayama Lama Dama Ding Dong. Nilama Duba Dingadanga Doog.
It's just making me think of that sketch now that Indian guy did. Of how parents name their kids. And it's... he's like the European, like he's very straightforward. And then he did the Chinese... And was grabbing a bunch of pots and pans and throwing them downstairs and then taking notes of them. And then he had like a bunch of wooden bowls or something for India. And he threw them down the stairs and took notes of them.
No, anyways, very famous Indian fellow. Which
Okay.
you should be ashamed for not remembering the name of.
Okay.
But he has the very famous quotation, which reads something
I can't
akin
remember.
to, it is not a sign of health to be well adjusted to a fundamentally ill society.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, on the hypochondriac thing, something else interesting with that is...
it's like, how do you tell if someone's hypochondriac or not?
Yeah, well, how do you tell if something is something?
There's this great book, actually, I read once, which said to see another in pain is to have faith, but to have pain yourself is to believe.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's a book about torture.
Yeah, it's a book called The Body in Pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's written by a Marxist or something.
Yeah, it was a good line, though. I liked it a lot.
So,
Worth the whole book, really.
getting political for a moment.
Oh. I think that roads, like, you could have 10 kilometers an hour slower, and
Yeah.
we'd still get places basically the same
Oh,
speed.
no, I totally agree. I think that the law speed should be lower.
Yeah.
Like, highways you can keep speed on, but, like,
Yeah.
residential areas, or, like, there's a highway going through a residential area, like, just drop the speed down. Let it be a residential
And I think,
area.
like, we have this, I didn't realize this, but Canada, like, I know Canada's a federated country, but
Yeah.
we actually have interprovincial tariffs so that, like, wine prices can not be crashed in one province or the other. And, you know, it's kind of weird. I think those should be lowered or removed if possible. But, and, you know, if we had, like, a Mussolini who came along.
Well, so, Trump is doing a lot of stuff right now.
Yeah.
And I was talking to someone about this, and it's very interesting.
I'm just trying to keep it all lighthearted
Yeah.
politics. And,
Yeah. Well, no, this
Mussolini.
is I want to relate
no.
this to the hypochondria.
Yeah.
This is very interesting.
No, politics aren't banned. It's only books. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Didn't we just gab about like no context gabbing?
About a book? Yeah.
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 Which you basically only get a conversation. We did a very bad job of giving it a book club review.
I don't know. Like, it's, if you've read it, then I think you have that interaction, right? Like, if we reviewed the whole plot, then you might as well not read the book. But this way, it's more of a, oh yeah, I read that, and this is their contribution.
But if you
to-
haven't read it, do you think it'd still be interesting?
you might be like, oh, this is, yeah, I think so. Like, you're like, I want to know what kind of story has these elements, right?
Yeah. So anyways,
and we're more teasing out, to bivalve.
Well, also, we both have read the book. I think part of the no books thing was because you had talked about books I hadn't read.
Oh.
I think that was part of it.
Okay.
I think my opinion of that has also changed, though.
So there's this great... I'm reading this book right now.
So back to the politics, which we're not allowed either.
A guy who's, like, quick save, right? And so he's, like... His inspirations are Bugs Bunny and... I can't remember. But basically, his superpower...
How a dictator takes over, this is what the person told me,
yeah,
is they arrest all their opponents and charge them with false crimes. They silence the media. They set up regimes so they give people more and more power. They gather all their closest allies to them and put them into positions of power.
Right.
And that's like the start of a dictatorship. So if you have a country that is full of corrupt media and there's a bunch of people in power who hate you, and the only way to get things done is to put people who you can actually trust in positions of power, and there's a bunch of criminals who've been getting away with stuff for ages, and they're all your opponents, and they know that you will fight them. And so they do everything they can to stop you from getting into power. And then you get into power and you start arresting them for their crimes.
And you're a dictator.
Yeah.
No, I think
that's the.
I think my rule with that with the politics one is a bit easier maybe than the hypochondria one, which is you're always going to feel persecuted and you're always going to have a justification for what you do. And that's why we don't allow those sort of things to happen, right? Because that's power corrupts, right?
Yeah.
You're always going to feel like Trudeau, when he froze the bank accounts, he's like, yeah, well, sometimes you need to stop the terrorists, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe. I actually, with him, he's probably just doing it as some sort of cynical thing. But giving him his due, it's like, well, they're terrorists. Of course I'm going to freeze their bank accounts. And that's why I don't think it should be possible to freeze bank accounts. No matter, like, I think removing people from a bank, like, they did that to Alex Jones, I think, possibly.
Nigel Farage.
They did that to Nigel.
They attempted to.
Wow. Because he's not even, like, a controversial figure, though, right? Is he? Like,
he is.
Isn't he just, like, a sort of milquetoast anti-immigration politician?
Yep, that's enough.
Like, at least Alex Jones goes after the people in power and is like...
Yeah, no, that's enough. Like, that was at the peak of, like, the lockdowns.
And Kanye... Now, Kanye is a weird one. He was also kicked out of his bank.
Yeah.
But he told them to do it, I think, so it's kind of a weird one. But yeah, no, I think that's really creepy. Like, banks should just be value neutral. Like, Switzerland, they took in the Nazi gold, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the sign of a good bank.
Yeah.
If your bank doesn't have at least, like, 10% Nazi gold, I'm not interested. You hear that, TD? You hear that CIBC? I want to see your Nazi gold index.
But it's debanking's bizarre because banks were a practical application to store money, and then they
actually, no amount of Nazi gold is going to convince me to switch to CIBC. I hate them. Like, they could say like 90% of our funds come from Nazi gold, and I'd be like, no, I don't care. I'm not interested. I'm not joining your bank.
I believe that is what we call a dog whistle.
No, like I don't want their Nazi gold. I have you seen the ads?
If you join our bank, we'll give you 10 pounds of Nazi gold.
Like, have you seen the ads CIBC puts out? They hate Canadians. They have the gall to call themselves the Bank of Canada. They're like this horrible, like, like, all their ads, right, are like, oh, I didn't feel at home in Canada.
Oh, those ads. Oh, God.
Until I had a bunch of Indian immigrants come and watch, like, cricket with me at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And none of their ads have white people in them. It's always a black person or an Indian person. Yeah. They have so many ads about, oh yeah, we need more immigrants. Their bank downtown has the 4chan fake tribe flag on it with like the black, like black people and transgender people and like it's the whole thing.
Don't you know black people's sexuality? I mean, apparently I'm attracted to what's his face?
The Rock. Yeah.
Not The Rock.
Isn't it Dwayne The Rock Johnson?
No,
Terry Crews.
yeah, Terry Crews.
Yeah.
It's not dark enough. It has
Yeah.
to be Terry Crews.
You see that?
Like, Terry Crews apparently is my ideal woman.
You see that Studio C's back, and they've got like Terry Crews working with them now.
They never went away.
I thought they quit, and
They quit, and a replacement cast came along.
So they quit.
Jason Gray joined for a bit, and now Matt is running the current season.
Yeah, it looks like they're back, which is cool. And Terry Crews is like doing guest appearances.
Yeah, he did one episode.
Is he a Mormon?
No.
No, because they are. I think Studio C is a bunch of Mormons, but yeah. So like they're. I don't know if you've seen it, but on Main Street downtown,
Yeah, I have.
They've got this heart that's like
Yes.
the black sexual. So I think what it is, right? The flag has become things you have no control over.
Yeah.
So you can't control that you're black. You can't control that you're gay. You can't control that you're trans. That's what it's become, I think. What?
You started with an R there, and that can go in two different directions with the next syllable you added.
Rans.
Right.
Trans. Do you know how much effort T is? Like, that's like 4 times as much effort as like Rans. Like, that's like an X. That's like, I quadrupled my efficiency.
Maybe I was just putting my own thoughts onto that.
Yeah. What, like racist or rapist? What was your...
I was both. Got either way.
I wasn't going for either.
That's where my mind.
Or there's got to be more than that. Like, I mean, how much can you? So the Christian argument against homosexuality back in the day was kind of along the lines of, look, just don't give in to temptation, right?
Yeah.
So a rapist, right? Like, from a Christian perspective, what's the difference? I think there is one, but what is it?
So, the no man shall lie with another man as they do a woman is Old Testament.
Yeah.
So, Old Testament, if you've read it all or know anything about Old Testament, is about torturing definitions until gain the answer you want.
Yeah.
And so, I think that using the Old Testament, you can actually say that gay relationships are fine.
Yeah.
It's no man will lie with another man as they do with a woman.
Yeah.
They'll lie with each other like men.
Yeah.
Women are for
None
children,
of that sissy
men
stuff.
are for love. As the Romans say.
Yeah, none of that sissy women stuff with the bros.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what the Bible was saying.
It actually might have been what it was saying. Not to such an extent, but so there's a thing that Jesus said, which is no man shall wear clothes of a woman and therefore dishonor women as such.
Yeah.
And so if you want to take that to the, again, torturing, I think Jesus is a little more hard to torture what he said. But torturing definitionally, and even throwing some Eastern Confucianism or Zen at it. It's basically Jesus saying, if you're a man, be a man.
Do you think if an Italian politician ran on the platform of pederasty, like, would they, like, get less or more votes?
What's the platform of pederasty?
Like, so the Romans had this sort of apprenticeship system?
Oh, that, yes.
Yeah.
Less.
Less, yeah? You don't think they want to... See, that's what a real reactionary is like. So they always say fascists are they're like hyper-progressive. They're not reactionary at all, right? Especially Nazis. Nazis are like extra progressive fascists.
Yeah.
And then whenever anyone has these like dictatorial... People also say Trump is a fascist, which he's not at all. Like maybe he's a dictator, but he's not a fascist. Like, you got to use the terms for what they mean.
Yes.
You know?
It's
And Trump isn't a dictator either, as far as I... let me think. He hasn't really done anything lately.
We have more of a dictator than they do.
Well, we always... Like, Canada has always...
Well, it's really apparent right now with the proroguing. Our representatives can't sit. It's completely under his power.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a long time to travel from... You know, it was a very big country. Traveling by horseback from one side of the country to the other. You can't have parliament in session all the time. You have to take some time off. So...
That's so stupid.
What? You think horses can go fast?
No, that we still use that system.
Oh, look at Mr. Progressive over here. No, see, we are a country of proud traditions.
God.
It used to be that they would... I think the proroguing was like the norm, and the exception was when they were sitting.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh yeah, you come and you talk, and then you go home, right?
Yeah.
But now, government's everywhere, so yeah.
But it... Yes, it's... See by see. Those ads are awful.
Ooh-wee! It's me, Jones, from...
That book that we talked about that will just confuse you. All right, bye.